So brilliant to see lots of you. I know there's lots more joining us, but I'm really excited to host this particular edition of the Noon Book Club because Lyndsey Simpson has been such a huge supporter of ours at Noon, and she has also been a real champion of what we're doing. And I think she and I have been championing each other really ever since we both started talking about this about 5 years ago, I think it is, since we
What?
it
Yep.
was right when I first set up Noon, and I remember coming to see you at Home House, and I was
Yep.
sitting there and getting really overexcited about what you now call the Age Rebellion, and I set up as Noon, and it was really when we're at that point as entrepreneurs where we were still kind of in the dreaming phase, and there's a very weird thing when you set something up from scratch, which doesn't really exist anymore, that for quite a long time you just feel like you're kind of telling the same story. You're trying to get everyone to believe in your story. And then you suddenly get a moment where somebody starts parroting the story back to you. And
Yep.
it's suddenly real. And I found in some ways, as an entrepreneur, that was a kind of very weird point. It was like, oh my God, they're believing the hype. It's actually something that's been so in your head and you've been trying to kind of breathe into life. It's suddenly a living, breathing thing. So I'm really excited to do this with you today, and talk about your book and your work and everything, because I think we were really in that kind of chrysalis together.
Yep, totally agree.
Um,
And right at the start of the movement, Eleanor,
yeah.
I cannot tell you how many of my friends, colleagues, associates told me that I was a fucking lunatic for wanting to start a business that was about over 50s and midlife. They were like, you're too early, no one's going to buy it, companies aren't going to spend any money on it, you're going against the tide. Literally everybody thought I had something loose going on in here. And in the first couple of years, you kind of think, have
Yeah,
I
you think, are
shit
they
off
all
more
mad?
than
No,
I
I
can
totally, I
chew,
totally agree.
you
People
know,
going, you're
and
doing
then
what?
and then
Midlife women,
suddenly,
what?
exactly, you suddenly start to get your threads and you get them business and you start to grow, and then you realize that actually you were just at the crest of probably what is the biggest demographic shift in history,
Mm.
and we were just early movers. And what's really been interesting to me is that we're early movers, but the UK has moved earlier than most of the other nations around the world. So
Yeah.
what we do in the UK was very quickly transported internationally. So it's a delight to be here, and I'm really chuffed to meet some of your Queenagers.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's lovely to have you here. And for those of you who've been reading our Queen Age's Careers newsletter for a while, which has got, over kind of 10,000 regular readers, this is Lyndsey has been very much supporting us in doing that and being our partner on that endeavour. So and we've been running our jobs board and all of that kind of thing. So everything we've been trying to do at Noon has been to really help move the dial in a practical way, on lots of this, as well as making the argument for why it's important. So, Lyndsey, our usual ritual at a Noon Book Club is for the author to read a bit from their book. So,
Okay.
just while everyone kind of settles down, I'm going to get you to read. For those of
Yep.
you who've just joined us a bit late, I can see there's lots more people coming in now. This is the Noon Book Club with Lyndsey Simpson. I'm Eleanor Mills, the founder of Noon, and we're going to be talking about Lyndsey's book, The Age Rebellion. And we are real kind of co-travelers on this path. So I'm really excited to have Lyndsey here, and take it away. Read us a bit of your book.
Perfect.
Put some questions in the chat if you want
Sure.
while Lyndsey's talking, and I'll make sure that they get answered. I've got lots of things to ask her too.
Perfect, thank you. Well, as a bit of scene set, just before I kind of dive straight into the middle of the book, The Age Rebellion, it's all about supercharging this next phase of life. So it isn't about a manifesto on aging. It isn't around just work. It's about the whole of the messy middle, life, relationships, death, work, starting businesses, and everything that goes into it. But fundamentally, at its core, it is inspirational. It's about giving you the positive momentum to go, how do I navigate this challenge? How do I support someone who I love who's going through this at the moment? How do I design a life that I never want to retire from? And so rather than reading the intro section, and I don't know why my camera keeps zooming in and out, I'm really sorry. I don't know what that is. I don't use Zoom very much. I'm more of a Teams girl. So apologies for the distraction. But I'm going to leap in to, for those of you when you get the book, page 102. It's in chapter 8. and it's called It's All About Redefining Expectations. And it's a little snippet, and I've picked it particularly because it's around some of the female input that I get from our audience. So I thought it might land well for this conversation. So it's all about redefining expectations. One huge expectation that I hear come up the most among women in our Me Redefined community is childcare. Very often, women are expected, or indeed want, to take on the lion's share of caring for their children when they're younger and put their careers and other dreams on hold to do so. However, if you have children who are still at home, now is the time to discuss the arrangements with your partner. Maybe you now want to rebalance the load instead of just rolling with the setup that was fine a few years ago, but now doesn't quite feel so aligned to your needs. You might be a bit further along in your parenting journey. Are you worried about your adult child's expectation that you'll drop everything to be a major caregiver in your grandchildren's upbringing? This comes up a lot in conversations with the women I work with. And if you're a man reading this, perhaps you can consider whether this expectation applies to the women that you know. This subject feels really taboo and certainly isn't talked about enough in families. I hear from so many women who feel that they are just hitting their stride in their 50s and their 60s, who are leaning into their careers. They're coming out the other side of menopause and feeling full of energy and wanting to travel more, lean into their work, return to education. And then one of their adult children assumes that they're going to want to just give all of this up and take on a substantial slice of the care for their grandchildren. So many women I talk to don't want to take on this level of care, but feel unable to say so to their family or their friends because of the weight of expectation on them. On the flip side, many grandmothers I speak to want to do more to help, either by providing childcare or contributing financially, but aren't confident enough to say so and disrupt their children's plans. So if you find yourself in one of these situations, or you know you might in the future, I implore you to have open, honest conversations with your loved ones as early as possible. These discussions might be really tricky to navigate, but they need to be had. Like I said, I would be sharing some home truths in this book, and this is one of them. I just think we should all get talking more with our loved ones. We need honest conversations about what our longer life expectations mean in practice. What was relevant for previous generations just isn't now that we have the joy of experiencing a brand new midlife from 50 to 75 before we head into our senior years. And so don't assume that others know what you want or what you don't want to do about money, your career, childcare, or any other topic. Now is the time to be clear in your own mind and start sharing. A little excerpt, and I know it's kind of a bit random because it's in the middle of a book, in 100 pages in, and you haven't got the context. But in the spirit of the book club, you told me to leap straight in, Eleanor, and so hopefully that was a bit of a spirit of the book.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting that you should kind of pick something about grandmothers because it's interesting within our noon community that, and actually what we see in this demographic is about actually getting on for a third of kind of more highly educated women don't have children.
Yep.
And so one of the things I'm always kind of quite careful with within a noon setting is never to make the assumption that women are mothers or
Yep.
grandmothers
And
because
I'm
I think
not,
yeah,
by
and
the
I know
way.
you're not. So it's quite interesting, and
But a
I
lot of
kind of
my
wanted to
friends
share
are.
that because I
Yep.
know that you're not. So it's interesting that even you said you're going to kind of read some stuff about kind of women at this point, and
Yeah.
that it's still the default when the conversation becomes around women becomes around kind of parenting or grandparenting or
Well,
motherhood.
and what it is, it's because it's
And
the taboo nature.
when that's not you. So I'm
No,
just really interested
it is.
in
So,
that.
so why I lent in on it is it's the taboo nature. So,
Mm.
for those of you that don't know anything about my background or what we do, I kind of have two hats. So my day job is the CEO of 55 Redefined, and we are redefining work for a 100-year life. So we're working with over 300 global corporates, from Amazon to AXA, Diageo, Warner Brothers, Tesco, you name it, fixing them from the inside so that we can enable people to work if they choose to do so into their 70s, their 80s and beyond. Okay. But what that means is that I have that day job, and then my other role is of an author, which is far more consumer and individual based, which is around how do you navigate, what are all the tips and tricks and things that I know about having a healthy lifespan, and how do we navigate some of these tricky topics. So the reason I picked up on that one, Eleanor, is one of we have a software solution called Me Redefined, which is a career and life coaching platform. And I've just seen a beautiful dog under Sharon's name that's appearing on screen. I'm like, oh, who's the shiny dog?
Often lots of nice dogs on the Noon,
oh,
on
we've
the
got a
Noon
cat
book
now
club.
from Kerry. So there's the pets joining in as well. But it's the real taboo nature. So part of that midlife career coaching platform is an AI. It's a movie set scenario, right, where people go into this movie of their life where they're the hero and lead actor. But the script is only halfway written because they're only halfway through their life. So we're going to take them on this journey of discovery right the way up to writing their 100th birthday speech, and then right the way back to wherever they are now in life to plan the next 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And they have an AI agent that we give them, an agent called Rosa. She's your runner on set assistant. And what's really interesting are the questions and the things that people share with Rosa. And they share it in a way that they say, I have not said this out loud to another human being. And so the reason I picked up on this one is that women in their 50s and 60s are saying that they have not declared, even to their closest friends, let alone their partners, that they don't want this life that is being served up on a plate for them, that everybody's expecting them to leap at. Like my kids just got pregnant and they're going to move near me, where they've lived 3 hours away for their entire adulthood, but they're going to suddenly move near me because I'm going to suddenly spring into grandparent mode. And they're going, I don't
Yeah,
really
no,
want to do that, thanks very much.
I
So
think there are lots of women who don't want that. I mean, we
yeah,
certainly hear that in the Noon circles. Maybe a bit like Rosa AI, the Noon circle is a place of kind of where truths are told, which aren't often kind of
exactly.
shared
But
elsewhere. But I think that
there's another
that's
section that I explore
but
that,
but
in
that's
here.
also kind of one of the really important things that we've been exploring at Noon is this sense of what are the stereotypes around
Yeah,
women, particularly at this point,
yeah,
and how do we get beyond them? So I know that lots of we had some kind of questions in advance, as Jen was saying before the call,
mm,
about kind of how do women at this point who are ambitious and want to power up.
yeah,
Lucy Ryan's research finds that 70% of women at this point
yeah,
at 50 plus want to power up their careers,
right.
when lots of the kind of companies that you're talking about and that you're working with are, maybe kind of getting rid of quite a lot of women in midlife. It happened to
Yeah,
me. There
yeah,
there are a lot of women who are finding their services maybe aren't being that appreciated at this point. So I'm
yeah,
really interested in your take on A, what do women do about that individually if they're trying to get jobs? And
yeah.
B, how do we change that narrative within corporations?
Yeah, so the narrative that is it basically in corporations, it's all about data, right? So no one picks up the phone to me and says, "Oh, we want to be really nice to midlife women," or
No,
can you give us a strategy to be nice to older people? I
no.
mean, literally never. But they will ring and say, we've got a real problem with attrition, and we've identified that that's because we're hiring people that are concentrated in the 20 to 29 age group, and they're not even making 12 months with us. So we've got a leaky bucket, or they'll ring us with a problem around absenteeism. In some
Mm,
sectors where you need resilience, there's a mental health epidemic, and that mental health is happening to our younger colleagues and not so much to our older colleagues who have developed, as you would say, they're forged in fire.
yeah.
They're not experiencing any less of life's shitty events, but they know that they've been through them before and they've come out the other side, and therefore they've built this strength and resilience that says, I can go again and I'm not going to be dented by that. I know I can thrive out the other side. And so what happens with the organizations is you've got to remember our systems, our entire corporate systems were built
Mm,
for a model where you had a three-stage life. You had education, you had work, and then you had retirement. We then added 30 new years in. So in the last century, we've added 30 healthy years to life expectancy. But nothing's changed in the corporate system. So when we invented retirement, which was only invented post-war, by the way, and it was invented to give ex-servicemen in the war kind of 2, 3 years of maintenance support. It was never meant like a 40-year gig of life. It was invented a century ago, and that age 65 came in arbitrarily. So we've added
And
30
also,
years.
people lived a lot less, a lot less long then. We've seen
Massively.
lifespan double in the
And
last 100 years. So it's
lit
also part of a shifting kind of demographic
exactly.
landscape.
Exactly. And so what's happened is nothing shifted in our corporates. So it's shifted in the audience base. And so this is what's waking up companies. They can see that 75% of the wealth, the consumer spend is held by 50 to 70-year-olds.
Yes.
And so you just have to look at the catwalk now or luxury brands or look at the cover of Vogue and you will see it's skewing now to men and women in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s because they're realizing that's where the buying power
Yeah,
is.
we're the ones with the money. I mean, we've been saying that for
100%.
years, but it's interesting to finally see that beginning to shift in, in things like fashion. I
Yeah.
mean, they're still not a particularly kind of universal kind of size or race or whatever, but they're certainly running a bit of grey hair because they know that the Queen Age of
100%.
Pound is where the value is at.
Yeah, and that then starts to trickle through. So, I mean, if I go back 3 weeks or so, I was down in Cornwall at the Eden Project at Anthropy, which was it's like the Davos for CEOs
Yeah, I went
meeting.
last year. It's certainly a thing.
Brilliant. And it was sponsored by Dentsu, who are one of the largest advertising and media agencies in the world. So Japanese owned corporate, they control our TV advertising, our billboard advertising, super, super young industry. Everybody thinks advertising or media is a young person's game. But the CEO, a lady in her 50s, decided to give up their sponsorship stage spot to bring me in to talk to the audience about people in midlife and how do we bring
Brilliant.
generations to work and how do we change the face of the advertising industry. And the only way you change the face of the advertising industry is hiring people in the demographic that you're trying to create adverts for, rather than expecting miraculously that a 50-year-old knows how to create an advert for a 20-year-old or a 20-year-old knows how to create an advert for a 50-year-old, because they don't. You just get it wrong. You get the cultural narrative, the imagery just wrong if you're not representing that. And that's just one example with which what we call mirroring in companies. So we're seeing companies like Barclays and AXA and Tesco, they all talk to us now in the last 12 to 18 months about how do we demographically mirror match the consumers that we're serving.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
fascinating. That's definitely new.
yeah, and so with that then creates demand. With that creates data because we can then start to prove that out and show, right, well, if you are going to ring AXA to say that you've got a health diagnosis, do you want to speak to a young person with a script in a contact centre who's going to go, have you spoken to your doctor, where's your referral? Or do you want to speak to a 76-year-old cancer survivor who's working perhaps a few hours a week, who's been through the process and knows how to navigate it
Yeah,
with life
no, no
experience?
question.
No question. But 3 years ago, someone like AXA, they would have never have thought, well, why would we be hiring people in their 60s and 70s that have never worked in financial services? They would assume wrongly that they won't work for the money. They're not going to want to come and
Mm.
work in a contact centre or work on this salary level. And so we start to then break assumptions. And if you look at that career leaning in, my advice would be, where are the sectors and the industries that are experiencing rapid growth and a shortfall of talent? And I'll give
Okay.
you three off the bat, right?
Yeah.
So, financial advisors. Okay. So, women make brilliant financial advisors.
Yeah, but
And
only 15% of financial advisors are women
yep.
currently.
And then what we're seeing in that industry is that because the wealth is held by older people, they don't want to be served their financial advice by a young person who
Yeah.
doesn't understand what they're wanting in their life. So it doesn't matter whether somebody's got 1 year's training or 20 years training. I'm going to have more respect and more relationship empathy with an advisor who's in my own demographic. And so we're seeing the financial services and wealth industry start to hire, train from scratch people that have never been in that sector that want to advise. Sector number two,
That's
green
interesting.
energy.
So are
Green
there
energy,
some
John.
particular companies that say ladies listening to this who fancy maybe training to become independent
Yeah,
financial
I'd
advisors might
have a look.
approach?
In the UK, I'd have a look at M&G. So
Yeah.
M&G Investments, they've got a large financial advisor work. They've got apprentices programs that are open to people of every age,
Okay.
and they're recognizing, along with all of the other firms, whether it's St James's Place or all of the other advisory firms, that there is power in life experience. That's what
Yeah.
I buy. I can teach somebody financial products, but the power is in life experiences and knowing what people are hoping, fearing, dreaming
No,
about
I,
and
I
navigating.
completely 100% agree with all of that. What kind of progress are we seeing within those companies? So what kind of numbers are we talking in terms of these schemes? Because the density scheme was, is great, but actually their older workers are still a very small amount of their
Yeah, but
workforce. I
changing.
mean, the
I mean,
average age in advertising is still like kind of 20s and
it
30s. So
is.
it's less than 6% of the people in advertising are over
Yeah.
50, and most of those are the men who tend to run them.
But if you then look at the what I would call the dirty sectors, so our industrial sectors, our non-desk-based working sectors, so Veolia is a
Hmm.
classic example. So water treatment works, waste management services, 1% of their workforce are over 75,
Okay.
1%, and 47% of their workforce are over 50.
Wow, that's amazing. What kind of
And
things are they doing?
oh, well, literally everything and anything. So if you want to go and understand how to do water treatment works, you want to understand how do we change from being part of natural resources into green energy, and
Hmm.
that green energy transfer. And rather than lean away from age, they're instead actually their recruitment campaigns. If you were to head over to the Veolia career site right now, you will see that they've created campaigns specifically targeting new hires over 50 to come and join their industry. And let me tell you, they would literally bite off your arm to have women want to join industrial areas,
Yeah, it's true.
where they just can't get them,
Yeah.
And I can go on. You could then go into audiology or
Yeah, yeah, no,
optometry.
we've got questions in the chat, but what are the
So
other
many,
places? So we've got
so
financial
many industries.
services, Veolia and things like kind of green energy,
Retail. So,
retail.
Tesco shared, the chief people officer for Tesco Ireland, very kindly stood on stage with us last month and shared what they're doing around their generational work. And
Mm,
they reported their age gap of
hmm.
76. And that age gap is the gap between the youngest and the oldest employee.
Yeah.
76 years.
So
So
they've got
they've got
one who's like 16 and one who's like in their
92.
90s.
Yeah, in the same store. So you've
Yeah.
got 16-year-olds working alongside people in their 90s and everything in between.
And is that
All
just in
in the same store.
Ireland or in the UK as well?
Well, actually, so that was in Ireland, that age gap, but the UK has an older representation. So in Ireland,
Mm,
about 35% of their workforce are over 50, but in the
hmm.
UK, it's almost 50-50.
Wow.
And when we think of Tesco, you might think of grocery retail, but they're not. You've got huge head offices
Yeah.
with HR, with marketing, data science. I mean, again, reskilling and moving into data science. There isn't a business
Yeah.
that we work with that doesn't have a shortage of data
Shortage.
scientists and
Yeah.
people that are prepared to reskill into the role. Because if you can match someone who likes data with life experience, so they're not just looking at the data, but they can go with
And
the,
they
and so
understand it.
what does that mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
what does that mean to buying behavior? What does that mean to where someone's going to shop on the aisle? That's what people want. They want this blend of, it's a bit like AI. 2 years ago, everybody wanted developers, coders, people that could build AI. Nobody needs that. The AI can code itself. What we need is people that can train the AI, that have got life experience, that have got judgment, that have got background knowledge around a process or a company or humans and their
Yeah.
behavior
I've
to
got a
be
lot of
one to many.
journalistic friends who are now busy training kind of AI
Yeah,
models because they are still hallucinating.
exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah,
AI, so we've got financial planning,
yeah,
green energy and kind of the environmental agency, retail,
yeah.
AI. Somebody's asking here if these roles tend to skew kind of younger and kind of like cheaper. Maybe they're not the kind of roles
So,
that
so
offer
money is an
that great sort
interesting
of
one,
thing.
right? So if you're changing industry and you are reskilling,
Yeah.
then you have to accept that you can't have a better deal because of your age. So if
Mm.
you're saying to a company, we want everybody to have the same opportunity, whether they're 20 or 70, then everybody's got the same opportunity. So the pay rate's the same, it's disclosed, your ability to progress is the same, your ability to earn more and learn and grow is the same. But it does mean that if you're changing sector rather than being an experienced in role, you are perhaps going to have to take a pay cut or a pay drop to make that shift. I share I share loads of what I call age rebels in the book, real
Yeah.
people, not famous people, real people that are starting businesses, changing industry. And one of them, I think you'll love. I love him because he's my brother. So my brother Darren, and I share his story because he is a classic age rebel, right? So he's 3 years older than me. So I turned 48 on Saturday. So he'll be turning 51 a week or so later. And 2, 3 years ago, he had spent 32 years working for Asda supermarkets. Joined them at 16 whilst he was doing his college course, and then was offered a job on their management training program and just never left. So
Yeah.
he's been a store manager all of his career, and he fucking hated it.
No.
Last couple of years, I'm not kidding, were just torturous. It's
Yeah.
like, it's another Christmas with I'm either in a freezer arguing with colleagues who haven't showed up, or I'm on a shop floor with warring
Cram
customers
and Christmas
fighting
carols on
for
the
the
roof.
last bloody thing going on. It's torture. It's like, and so he came to my that Christmas and flopped on the sofa and he said, if I have to do another Christmas in a supermarket, I'm gonna go mad. So I talk about his story. I talk about the deal that we struck, which was, day after New Year, you come into my house. We're working through your purpose with a structure, which I go through in the book,
Yeah.
Ikigai, if you've come through it. So it's a really structured process of how to find your purpose. And the very short version of this is that we narrowed down Darren's purpose to the fact that he actually did like retail because he loves customers and he loves people. He just doesn't want big box retail, doesn't want thousands of employees, and he
Mm.
doesn't want warring customers or chasing shoplifters down the road anymore.
Yeah.
That's not his fun place. But
No, fair.
he understands retail. He also has a slight thing on his shoulder that he's had, which is I went to university and he didn't, and he feels like he missed out on something there.
So
And
did he go back
so
to study?
he did. So
Amazing.
and then also he's fascinated in science. When we went back to his childhood, all of he used to read the Guinness Book of Records. He was interested in the science, the biology programs, and through this process, our dad turned deaf just a couple of weeks before his 70th birthday with a virus. He just had hearing. Next day, woke up no hearing. And so my brother, who lived closer to him, had been through the audiology journey and he had me having a cochlear implant and everything else. And so, long story short, we worked out that he could retrain as an audiologist,
Wow.
Specsavers, one of our customers. So I rang Specsavers and said, right, you keep hiring young people through the Prince's Trust who are trained to be then audiologists.
Yeah.
And then somehow you expect them to grow into be franchise partners and store managers and understand marketing and people and customers. And they don't. They
No.
don't want to do anything other than audiology, or they don't like it and they leave 2, 3, 4 years
Yeah.
later. So I'm like, let's spin it on its head. Let's hire people in midlife who have got business experience. They
Yeah.
could have maybe worked in hospitality, leisure, retail,
Yeah.
and they understand people and P&Ls and business, but
Yeah.
they know nothing about audiology. So you're
Yeah.
going to pay for them to go to university, get the qualification, and then let them work through. And so he did that. So he took a pay cut, big pay cut for 2 years. They paid for his university, went to De Montfort University, qualified as an audiologist, had to resit his English and his maths GCSE
Mm.
alongside my nieces who were doing their homework on the same days as him
Yeah.
because he couldn't find his college certificates from when he
Oh,
got his BTEC
no.
30 odd years ago. And he then qualified as an audiologist, and then 3 months ago he bought 3 franchises. So he
Wow.
now runs 3 Specsavers stores. He has employees again. He's now earning exactly what he earned 2 years earlier, but he's got 20, 30 years. He can build out the business, he can buy more franchises, and he is literally the happiest I've seen him in over
Oh.
a decade. And so, but the reflection was, if he didn't have me as his annoying sister, that was like, prodding him and going, well, you can do this. And, he was like, well, what can I do? I've only ever worked in retail. And I know, and I'm trapped because I earn a good money and I've got two young daughters. And
Yeah,
this notion of you can't escape your situation. And so what I try to bring to life in the Age Rebellion is actually what you do. So
yeah.
not theory, not have a think about it and write a list, but this is what you do. This is the process to follow. And these are other people that are going to give you inspiration around what to do next. Because it might be you that's thinking this, but it might be your husband or your mate or a colleague who's just been made redundant. And
Yeah,
so,
no, I love the practicality of your stuff
so
around
practical.
pivoting, Lindsay. I think it's really brilliant.
I'm so
And
flipping bossy. It's
no, no,
so
I love it because actually this book, I love you, but this book feels a bit like, sitting kind of having a drink with you going, well, come on,
yeah,
this is, of
buck
course you
up.
can do it, buck up. It's a bit like having your bossy older sister going, oh, don't be ridiculous, of course you can. But I think that's definitely one of its strengths. And I think it's an incredible story about your brother. And I think you're so right that and we see it all the time in the noon circles and on the things that we do that you can feel like you're done because what we both know from our research is that there's a kind of for me this midlife is like the middle of a figure of eight or in that infinity loop. It's that kind of bit where they cross over, and
Yeah,
for so many of us we feel like we have got to the end of that first circle. We have,
yeah,
whatever we have been doing, whatever it was has fallen away. We are going to have to pivot. We're going to have to do something else. Maybe
yeah,
someone's died or we got divorced or we've been
yeah,
made redundant or the world has shifted for
yeah,
lots of us, what I call the midlife collision or clusterfuck. It all
yeah,
happens at once.
yeah,
And so we know we're in that space. And what
yeah,
we've been thinking about a lot in our noon circles is exactly what you're talking about. What are the practical things about how you shift from one bit to another? But
yeah.
also accepting that in the 100-year life, there's enough time
To
to
go again.
spend,
Yeah,
a couple of years, to think about it, to go back to college,
yeah,
to actually really set yourself up. So, there's somebody in the chat who says she's just retrained as a reflexologist. I was
brilliant.
with somebody on Friday who'd actually retrained as a financial advisor at one of our retreats, another one lots of them going back to study. And I think that one of the things that I love about what you're doing at 55 Redefined and with your book is saying it's almost like respect yourself, invest in yourself,
Yeah,
understand that you really are likely to be here for a lot longer than you think. And
yeah,
that getting to the end of what you've been doing at 50, 60 is going to be pretty normal. And we're
yeah,
all going to have to shift into something else.
completely.
And
And
we
we're
are the pioneers on that because we're the first
100%
generation really to really live the 100-year life in real time as things are
correct.
changing. So
We,
that's why I think these conversations are so important. And
yeah,
people desperately need roadmaps. Your book, the book I wrote, Much More to Come, which is also about how do we sit in that discomfort for a
yeah,
bit and give ourselves enough time to actually work out, like you did for your brother, what really is going to make us kind of happy, kind of
yeah.
going forward.
And it is a
And,
plan.
and and that's a big psychological shift, I think, for a lot of people, particularly for
Yeah,
women, because the
yeah,
culture so says you're done, you're on the scrap heap, you've had
yeah,
it. When I got made redundant from the Sunday Times, the headline that the Telegraph put on the piece that I wrote was on the scrap heap at 50 or on the scrap heap at 49.
yeah,
And that has very much been the story. So you and I love these things in the chat about kind of trailblazers. I think you and I have really been trying to make this argument as kind of strongly and as powerfully as we can that
mm,
we aren't done yet. I think it's
yeah,
particularly important for women because of the gendered ageism out there in the culture. But
yeah,
everybody's got to shift their mentality because we can't just. I remember going to see my mum in Spain and just looking at all these people who probably for like 30, 40 years are just sitting there drinking gin and playing golf. I mean, okay, maybe for a weekend, but it's not a life. And I
it
think that
doesn't
there's so
fill
much
the time.
wasted
Mm.
energy out there, and the world needs all of us to be, pulling our weight. We're not exactly in a brilliant position.
No, I mean it's very true. There are, I suppose, real hard facts in the book about this, around, people don't understand the connection between retirement and mortality.
Yeah.
So,
If you
um,
retire, you die, basically, right?
there is a very direct correlation, and the longer you put off retiring in its traditional context, the healthier and longer you are likely to live, and those around you. So we can often encourage people around us to retire. Oh, you want to take more time and have more holidays? No, you want to work less and live more. You need to find a life where
Yeah.
you start to get more balance and work less and live more. But 100% of one thing and nothing of the other is not a path that
No,
solves us when we're going to be living to
no,
100
I think
normal.
that's true. I mean, the Noon research we did with Accenture showed that flexibility, and you quote it in your book actually, that that flexibility it becomes 16 times more important to particularly women at midlife than
Yeah.
status.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think we don't necessarily want, and I'm a great believer in this pivot and in taking slightly the road less traveled and discovering some different parts of ourselves at this point. And I think that we may want to go on working, we need to go on having purpose and doing something, but we don't necessarily need to go on doing the thing that we were doing before.
No, but you
But
do need to create a trail. So one of
for
my
sure,
my issues is people have cliff edges.
yeah,
So they either get pushed off of a cliff because they're like given early redundancy or things that they weren't expecting, or they leap off a cliff and they think, oh, early retirement is the destination and that's the happy zone, and they realize actually it's only an 18-month gig, and at the end of that is kind of loneliness, boredom, and a bit of invisibility actually.
yeah,
What we need to do is stop creating these cliff edges. So if you don't like doing what you're doing, or you haven't got a plan where you are, what happens is people think of what they want to do in the future. They can maybe anchor on something, but they don't know how to get from A to B. So I see people in corporate life, for example, resigning from their job or taking voluntary redundancy. So I'm going to get a big paycheck, I'm going to take VR, and then I'm going to have all the time in the world to think about what comes next. And it's like, don't do it. Don't take VR until you know what comes next,
yeah,
because it's incredibly hard to get back into work once you've stepped out and lost your bargaining power. And equally, it may be that to get to your dream goal, you need elements of the place where you're working. So again, I create scenarios and share examples of how people, I think there's one in there that I use of somebody who's perhaps working as a salesperson in a corporate, but really wants to be a landscape gardener.
yeah,
And people think it's this or this. I'm either going to carry on earning the sales job and earning the bonuses and doing a job where I've sold my soul that I don't enjoy, or I have to give up everything and resign and reskill and become a landscape gardener, and I don't think I can afford it, and therefore I'm never actually going to make the leap. There are a million permutations that take you in the direction of being a landscape gardener. You could start a business that you're selling marketing services to gardening firms. You can take a pathway where you're using your bonuses to go to an evening college course and start learning the practice of this whilst you're still being paid. So suddenly your work is paying for your career shift. You can actually then start, I mean, literally I can go through
or go
example
part-time.
after
We,
example.
we talk a lot about it's a bit like a kind of DJ mixing in a new record.
Yeah,
You don't have to kind of cut it off and have a kind of
no,
terrifying pause. You can begin to fade in a side hustle or kind of
yeah,
fade out. I mean, I want to come back to you on this because there are quite a few people in the chat saying,
yeah,
that's all very well if you can afford to just kind of stop work and kind of retrain. What if you've got to keep working? I suggested that apprenticeships are good for that because they'll pay you to
yeah.
do it. Or
Well,
you're saying maybe you go part-time a bit in what you're doing and
yeah.
dial up something else.
A lot of the
Any
companies
other
will
tips?
Well, most companies will pay you to be trained. So if you're finding the right industries and you're finding the right companies, they will pay for your training. So again, you don't have to kind of like leave a sector and then think I've got to then go to Open University or put myself through this skilling. There will companies that will pay you, or there are companies that will provide the training for free. So Salesforce, I should imagine most people have heard of Salesforce. It's one of the biggest CRM systems in the world. Well, Salesforce realised they have a problem, that there's now so many companies with Salesforce, but there's a shortage of Salesforce engineers that can
Yeah,
manage the Salesforce systems. So until an army of Salesforce engineers gets trained around the world and employed by the companies that are their customers, they can't sell any more Salesforce solutions because they can't implement it. So Salesforce will give you full training to be a Salesforce ninja for free. You can
yeah.
access, so again, so if you've got a
So it's
part-time
about
income,
finding the companies which are doing that. I mean,
100%.
maybe we should do a follow-up to this where we do, where you've given us some examples, but
Yeah,
maybe some of the people at 55 Redefined could share with us exactly the kind of sectors that the women could be thinking
yeah,
about and the kind of companies who are doing this. I mean, I know we did a thing with Noon with Amazon who were
yeah,
doing kind of
love it.
apprenticeships for older workers
Well,
and
and
will
term time
send
only
you to
contracts.
university and all that kind of thing and pay you
Yeah.
while you're doing it.
Yeah, so Amazon offer term time only contracts. And so if you, they don't have enough women applying to their distribution centres. And again, we think distribution centres and we think delivery drivers.
Yeah,
No, there are robotics engineers. There are people that are keeping the dancing robots, fixing and maintained and everything that you'd expect in a site that employs thousands of people,
yeah,
have all of the functions and all the delivery, but they want more women in regional locations. So they're
yeah,
like, well, let's do term time only contracts then. And that gets rid of the reason why women say they're not applying. And again, interestingly, they then end up with not only women with child age, schooling age children, but they end up with grandparents of
yeah.
women that have had to pull away from their career because they wanted to lean in and support their children, their adult
Yeah, and then
children.
need some job. So, hang on, so I'm going to read some of the things from the chat. So, Kerry says,
Yeah.
I'm divorced, had to buy a house for the first time with nothing. So, I'm up to my eyes in mortgage till I'm 77. So, I had to earn at least what I earn as a top of the tier teacher. Our school is changing drastically, and I am struggling to find jobs at schools because they want to employ younger, cheaper models for the staff path to cost of me. I'd be delighted to repivot, but cannot afford any time off to train for anything else unless I can get something to train in over the big summer holidays. I'm interested in HR and recruitment or comms as an English teacher for years. So what would the great Lyndsey have to say to her?
So I'd be looking at what is there outside of the public sector for teaching. So the private
Private
school
sector.
sector is
Yeah.
booming.
Online tutoring. My children do that. Very
Online
lucrative.
tutoring, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So how do you supplement, Zoom being a wonderful thing, you can do 5 hours over a weekend, earn
Yeah.
a brilliant hourly rate, supporting people in their lead up to their exams and extra tutoring. That's a
That is
massive
how my daughter has just paid for a lot of her masters.
Yep,
She does
yep.
about 10 hours of that a week tutoring kids in Singapore and China, particularly if you're an English teacher. Really, really, really lucrative. There are lots of online agencies and you can do it from anywhere.
There's a crisis and gap of teachers in colleges. So we
Yeah,
think of schools, but colleges, the
yeah.
old polytechnics, they are crying out for teachers. And again, what is there a subject that's adjacent to your qualified subject where again they don't have enough training people, in the companies?
Probably
So
maths or physics, which isn't that adjacent I
well,
think she's
it's
kind of
all
maybe
sorts. I mean, honestly, I could give you so many industry. I mean, I've got a sofa next to me, right? There are not enough fabric upholsterers in the UK to keep the companies enabling them to make sofas.
oh yeah, she's saying
So,
colleges pay a lot less, sadly. She'd love to teach in a
uh,
college in a college.
well, but the private sector is owned mainly now. It's had a huge injection of capital from the venture capital community, the VC community, who are buying up
But
lots of
loads and loads of
private.
private schools are shutting down because of the changes to that.
Um, well, yes and no. I think there's
I
lots
think
that are
there's
still
lots of
doing very
private
well.
tutoring. I think
Yeah,
there's lots of
yeah.
private
There's
tutoring
lots.
places.
Yeah,
But yeah,
there
no,
is.
hang on. Yes, someone else saying ours is closing sixth form, hence I want to move. No, I think there is a bit of a that's a bit, but
Yeah,
I know what you mean that you can pivot within that
yeah,
sector.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
and someone's asking about apprenticeships. Can you do an apprenticeship if you've already got a degree?
Yes, you
My
can do an
understanding was that
apprenticeship
you
at any
can't.
point. There's no minimum base because apprenticeships are generally skills based. So you're learning something new. So you can be an apprentice learning marketing. You'd be an apprentice learning data skills or
Yeah,
AI.
or project management. I interviewed someone.
Yeah,
In fact, I know that some of the redefiners in your book are members of the Noon community. You've got Nushin, who's our
yeah,
lovely lady who became a pilot.
yeah,
I mean, every time I
exactly.
go to a noon, every time we run a noon circle, the whole place is full of made amazing case studies for
Yeah,
delivery.
exactly. It's like, what I need is a new challenge. I'm going to become a pilot and get my pilot's license. I mean, I think a lot of the
Is there a
limitations,
directory of apprenticeships you could point us to, please? Is
not that I know of,
Geraldine saying? Okay.
because we don't provide apprenticeships directly, it's not what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know that one. But looking on Jobs Redefined
Yeah, I tell
will
you who
obviously give
might.
you a feel for the companies that are currently
Ewan
advertising.
Blair is big on
He is,
apprenticeships.
yes,
I can't remember what his company's called, which I should know because one
yeah,
of my brothers works there. But they do loads of those kind of programs. I
yeah,
will check that out for you, and we'll come back to you also on other schemes. Metaverse, that's it. Well done, Daniela.
yeah,
Multiverse, that's right.
multiverse, yeah,
Not multiverse, metaverse is something else. But yeah, we'll come back to you with some stuff about all the kinds of Salesforce things or the people that Lyndsey actively knows from her stuff that are actively looking for people in
yeah,
this kind of thing. It's kind
yeah.
of a lot of the stuff that we've been running also on the Noon Jobs
Yeah.
Board.
But I'd also encourage people to look at self-employment. So the fastest growing category of entrepreneurs, first time brand new entrepreneurs,
Yeah,
are over 50s.
yeah.
And they are
Women.
significant. I don't have it around gender. I just know that they're over 50s. It's from an age perspective.
Yeah,
But
okay.
what I do know is that they are significantly more likely to develop high growth, fast scaling startups and be more profitable.
I
So
think the
they
figure from the Harvard Business School is that something like 2.6 times more likely
yeah,
to
be
create a
successful.
successful company than
Correct.
somebody under 30.
Exactly.
I love that stat.
And so self-employment and in the broadest possible context. So you've got entrepreneurs who are building businesses. You're building Noon, I'm building 55 Really Fine. So you've got businesses that have been built, but you've also got contractors. So you've got
Yeah.
self-employment. So
Consultants. Lots of Queen
book,
Ages are selling back
bookkeepers,
into their old
tutors. Yeah.
industries, their
So,
own.
so to the English teacher that doesn't want to work, rather than gigging at tutoring, become a full-time tutor. Set up as a full-time tutor.
Yeah,
Fill your week with 35 different clients that are
slots.
filling your time slots and go to market and create a marketing strategy and align to the schools. And you can suddenly find that you're employing other teachers because there is a booming market for tutoring,
Yeah,
particularly if you've got any grammar schools anywhere near you. So
yeah.
supporting people trying to get into the grammar school
Well,
system.
and also for
So
all GCSEs, A levels, whatever. No, I
yeah,
think I think you're right. I think that increasingly, and it's certainly, it's what I did when I pivoted, and I see it with lots of Queenagers within Noon, and we did our big report for HSBC on Queenager entrepreneurs early this year. And
mm,
I remember you coming along to the lunch. But what's really interesting, I think, about this sector is the women who are using what they know from their old life and the
yeah,
interest that they've got in their new life and
yeah,
putting it together to make a business which both is purposeful
yeah,
and keeps them going with some income in
yeah,
retirement. And we see so also that marries with what we're saying about the spending power of the kind of Queen Ager demographic, that there are
yeah,
so few brands still who are actively targeting us. I mean, one bit of fashion at Fashion Week, they run a few kind of things with some grey hairs, and everyone gets very excited about the luxury fashion business. But the truth is, there are very, very, very few brands who are actively targeting older people
yeah,
still.
yeah.
So I think that but that is also a huge opportunity for
Opportunity,
Queen Age entrepreneurs because we know
100%.
what we want. No one else is actually
Go
doing that.
build
So
it.
there's a huge market there. We see that, with the
There is.
Noon and our
This is
Queen Age
this is my
directory.
eighth business, right? And every single one of my
I
businesses
love you. You're
been
such a proper entrepreneur.
they've been in a different sector with no correlation and no background experience. So I'm currently running a tech and SaaS business that's global tech and SaaS. I've never built SaaS before. I've never run a tech business. I ran a HR and recruitment outsourcing business. No background in HR, no background in recruitment. I had a champagne and cocktail bar and restaurant business. Never worked in a restaurant, never even worked as a waitress, did that one. I've had a financial services advisory business. So you don't have to be an inventor. You don't have to be the next, inventor of the iPhone. For me to be a business entrepreneur, you just have to solve one thing slightly better than the most of the other people in the market.
Yeah,
That's
no,
it.
I think that's
You can
true.
be the best coffee
I'm just
shop in your high
interested to.
street. You can be the best tutor in your area. You could be the only tutor that knows how to do SEO advertising on Google so that your advert comes up. That's all you need to do is be better than the next person and you will be a successful entrepreneur. But we overthink it. We expect it's got to be some big grand plan or some amazing invention that only we have created. With rubbish. You don't have to. I've got a list, I've got a little book, right, of industries that are shit, that need a shake up, right? I'll give you two of them as a gift that if I don't get there first, then you are welcome to them. So hire cars overseas.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I go to every airport and I see a queue of customers who are stressed to their eyeballs, having a barney about an insurance that they weren't expecting at
Yeah,
the
it's
desk as they're
terrible. I
trying to
agree.
pick up their hire. There has to be a
A
better
better way.
way of doing
Yeah,
hire cars.
yeah.
Funerals. So I've had
Oh,
my fair share of funerals,
yeah.
unfortunately, to organise. And it's like it's caught up in the 1980s
Mm,
of black and morbidity and tradition that no longer applies, and
yeah.
so and a complete lack of customer service because they think that there's no customers coming back because last customer died on me. So you know absolute opportunity to shake things up. You know, I'll give you a third one. From my experience of running a bar and restaurant, there wasn't a single waste management company, commercial waste management company, that was able in 3 years to pick up our bins on the day that they said that they were going to be picked up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a massive operational issue for a bar and restaurant that's got a curbside high street presence. Everywhere you look, there will be an experience that you have experienced in a shop or a restaurant or in a business or in a contact
Yeah,
center.
which you could do better. No, it's true too.
Yeah,
One of
just do
my
better.
one of our other great queenagers is a woman called Sarah Pittendry, and she was going to lose her house. She had a business that went, and she was going it went bankrupt, and she was going to lose her house. And she set up a business on her kitchen table because she was suddenly like, I'm not going to lose my house,
Yep.
and selling, creating. You know, when you go to weddings, they have those kind of covers over chairs with bows, and they have nice like kind of linen on the table. She realised that all of that for weddings was actually a disaster and really horrible, and that she could undercut it and do it better. And she went around a few hotels and sold it in. She created an incredible franchise business, and you know,
Yep.
it's made her a millionaire. So it's kind of, I think that Lindsay's totally right that there are these kind of opportunities all around. And it's what one of the ladies on the thing was saying. Well, the problem with being a midlife woman is the kind of gendered ageism, which means you get knocked out by the AI when you apply. I think that's, you know, that's largely true, and we know that it's really hard, you know, it can be hard to get through applications
Yep.
because of your CV and that kind of thing. But in which case, even more important, not to go to the kind of existing companies, but to use all your, you know,
Network.
wily 50-year-old kind
Who
of
have you, who do
knowledge.
you know? Who's your cousin, your auntie, your old neighbour? I mean, this is where actually we live in such a super connected world, right?
Mm.
So I'm going to give you a classic example that there is nobody that isn't reachable on LinkedIn. So, you know, half an hour ago before this call, Richard Branson very, very kindly has done an Instagram post about me and the Age Rebellion, right?
Yeah, it's
Last
saying that
week,
he's in his 70s, so and he's
he's in
still
his
got
mid
lots of
70s
plans.
and he's got loads to give and he's still starting businesses. Last week, I went and bought a coffee for the UK and Ireland CEO of YouTube. She doesn't know me from Adam. She's got no reason to meet me. I've asked for a coffee. I've asked who she knows because I don't have a consumer audience. I'm known in the B2B world. Who can help me with that? She's like, oh, well, let me put you in touch with my friend Gabby Roslin and let me put you in touch with so and so who does this. You know, so
If you don't ask, you don't get,
don't ask. And so
definitely.
if there's a company that you're not getting an application through to, who's the HR director? Who's the head of recruitment? Go and connect with on LinkedIn, send them a personal message. Stand out. You know, you just got to be a little bit, as I say, and this is going to sound a little bit sharp helby and a bit kind of bossy, but you've got to take agency over your own future. You know, you are going to have brick walls that are placed in front of you, but you are strong enough to just bloody punch your way through them or go round them or find a wily way over them. You've just got to have enough plans of plan B, plan C, plan D, and inspiration. And then once you've done it once, you then know that actually there's nothing that's going to stop you because there's just a solution that you haven't quite landed on yet. But who do you know? Who's in your friendship group? Who's a bit of a kind of know-it-all like me that you can go, right, I need 5 different ideas of how to do this that I haven't thought of. You know, who are those people that are in your network that you can bounce this stuff around with and go, right, I haven't done that, I haven't done that. How do I do that? And start focusing on the solutions
Yeah.
rather than the obstacles. Because I promise you, there are ways around it. There's always a way around it. For as many businesses that I have that are making redundancies, I have just as many businesses that cannot hire the volume. I'm going to give you one more example of the 40th largest employer in the world, ISS. If you haven't heard of ISS, look them up. 50% of their workforce are over 50. They control every catering site, every facilities management, most reception desks in every office you'll go to. They are a giant. They employ over 500,000 people, right?
Wow.
They cannot get people to apply. Sodexo cannot get people to apply to be catering.
Yeah.
G4S cannot get people to apply to be prison guards or
Yeah.
care home people. That there is such a shortage. It just might be that there's a passion and something that you can do in an industry you've never thought about, you know. And so, and I'm going to sound really careless when I say this, but it doesn't matter that you've done something for 30 years. Great, brilliant. Put a line in it and go and do something completely different for the next 10 years. And then, do you know what? put a line in that and then go
Yeah,
again and
I
go
do,
again
no,
and go again.
I think that I mean I love Lyndsey's spirit, and I know that not everyone is quite as ebullient as she is, and I know I'm quite highly up there. But but I think that she is right, and there's a kind of can-do mentality here. I love Linda, who's just come on the chat. She's saying I was given an interview after the deadline because I dropped my paper CV in at reception on a Sunday and had a conversation with the receptionist, and the recruiter called me on the Monday. I think that that's really true. I mean, in the kind of rebrand yourself in midlife course that we do on Noon, my kind of
Yeah,
sing the song of yourself. That's all about how do you stand out? How do you make
yeah,
yourself memorable? What's the story that you're telling about yourself, which will make somebody remember you and kind of want to help you? So I
yeah,
also think, there are these systemic things, but one
yeah,
of the things we know about doing as queenagers is kind of, how to get round the roadblocks. And when I was an
yeah,
editor and you were sending, Christina Lamb off to Iran or whatever, you absolutely knew that you would put in an official request
yeah.
for a visa and they'd come back and say no. That was just the beginning. It was like we were going to get her in there, but
Yeah.
the official channel was just the
Yeah.
kind of the first hurdle. So I
And
think
and
thinking
once,
around the problem a bit, or
yeah,
kind of if you
and
can't get into a company to get a job,
yeah.
could you retrain? I mean, I think it is being systematic about
Mm.
if you really need to earn some money, what could you do where they are actively looking for people?
And my brain's been whirring around the English teacher. I can't remember her name that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
she's on
The
here.
English,
Yeah,
and so I've already, because my brain's a problem. You can probably gather I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer by
yeah.
trade. So my brain's already gone to two other jobs that they
Okay,
could
what
do.
else could she do?
Okay, so one would be, so if she's a really experienced English teacher, then there's going to be English teachers around the nation who need help and shortcuts and hacks on prepping for certain classes
Mm,
and class
that's a
notes.
good
So how do
idea.
you build things one to many? How do you build a short course for English teachers or all the tools that you need to prep for this class, for this age group, for this hacks on being an English teacher? Second one would be, around the tuition. So if you don't want to do one-to-one tuition, because I'm a big believer that the way you scale businesses is that you have to do one to many, because otherwise you're just renting time. You need to, how do I earn money in my sleep? It's always the question, how do I earn money in my sleep, right? And so if I'm an English teacher, yes, I can do tuition, or I can create short courses. Here's a short course that you can buy online for £100 if you've got a child that you want to get into grammar school. Here's a short course that you can buy for this, and you do it once, you build it once, you build a really simple website that you can do yourself these days, and and then
Keep
you just
selling it.
want people to,
Yeah, it's
all you have to do
passive,
is a bit of marketing.
what we call passive income, which we're
Passive
very
income.
keen on as
And so,
entrepreneurs.
I mean, probably a good job we've got a time limit. Otherwise, by the end of this, the poor English teacher could go, "Oh my God, here's another five
Is
ideas."
that enough? Before you go, there's somebody, we've had several people asking, any thoughts on opportunities in the charity sector?
uh, as long as you're accepting of the fact that it's probably more purpose and not pay. So, the charity sector is not well paid at the
At the
start.
best of times, yeah.
It's very much looking for volunteers and looking for people that are willing to take their skills from corporate sector and bring it to the benefit of the social impact sector. So I think there's stacks of opportunities. They can't afford to advertise roles, but every charity I speak to has got vacancies. So again, if you're in the position that you're able to work for a different salary level or more part-time, or you want to live more and work less by reducing your hours in your paid work and actually volunteering or giving back, then there's stacks of opportunity. But you'll probably have to go and find and speak to the charities you're interested in, because you won't find them on the job boards because they
No, it's
cannot
true.
afford the
That's a
advertising.
real one. When I was at Oxford, when we left, we were given this idea. They gave us the sheet on what they called the creative job search,
Yeah,
which was basically decide what you want to do, go and find or talk to anyone you possibly know or have ever known who does it, and
yeah,
ask them to kind of set you up with a coffee with like five other people, and basically just keep hassling someone until they get you a job.
yeah.
And that used to be the
And
kind of the
but
old
they're a
model.
brilliant learning ground for non-exec roles. So if you've got a more senior background in
Yeah.
business, getting your first one or two non-exec director roles in a charity is a brilliant way to understand governance, board dynamics, and then leapfrog you into then paid non-exec director roles in
Yeah,
the
I think
commercial
I think that I
sector.
think that's definitely true. I like the somebody saying it feels like the wise elders model of employment might work. She
Yeah,
says, I
yeah,
know we aren't that old. Use all the skills we've learned over the years to train those coming behind us. Lots of my friends are moving into this. Absolutely. I mean, it's really
100%.
thinking, Amanda, about what we have, which other people don't. So hang on, somebody's saying here, Trustees Limited is great for charity work.
Mm.
Um, Lizzie says Prospect US is a great charity. Prospect Us is a great charity one. So we'll share some of these kind of more tips. I tell you what I've been thinking, Lindsay, talking to you, is we should maybe use our circled model because I like you saying, oh, well, think about talking to your kind of most upbeat mate or kind of knows about it.
Yeah,
Actually, within Noon, there are so many people with so many kind of, kind of entries into different places and advice.
yeah,
I'm thinking we should set up some kind of queenager, written down kind of career kind of reinvention circles
yeah.
where we kind of, and we kind of think about bringing some kind of expertise and
I
also
think
everyone brainstorming for other people because we all
I
know
think it is because
different
sometimes you're
things.
blind, you know, and this is, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah,
You're so embedded in the reasons why not.
yeah.
My brother would have given me 20 reasons why no one else would employ him other than Sainsbury's, Waitrose, or another supermarket.
And why he couldn't retrain and he was
And
never
why I
gonna.
couldn't. It was all I couldn't. I can't do that, and I can't afford that, and my mortgage is too high, and da 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 da, and da. People feel trapped,
Yeah.
but sometimes need someone else to help get you out your own head and just give it a different perspective on it. And so that's what I try to do with the Age Rebellion. But you're right, it is, and I do actually encourage, who are the other people around you that are different to you, and they could be not people that you even know very well, as I say. It could be people that you
Well,
just reach out to, that you've heard on a podcast or that you've seen do something interesting on LinkedIn, or on social channels, and you're like, do you know what, can I grab 10 minutes with you just for your perspective? And yeah, you'll get maybe 9 no's, but the one yes that you get will be game changing and will be breakthrough and will take you in a different path. And so I love that concept of
I
co-creation.
love talking to you, Lindsay. It's because you've got such like it was what I call kind of like journalist, it's journalist energy. It's where you and I have always got on, the kind of journalist, kind of entrepreneur, kind of hustler zone, I'm afraid is very
Yeah,
much kind of, where we hang out. But I think that it's also really important that we can all do a bit of hustle. And
yeah,
we've also got a lot more time left than we think.
so
We've got a
much.
lot more skills than we think. And
Yeah,
also, we know quite a lot about the world, and you can do this stuff. I've never run a business in my life. I've now have two businesses, and
yeah,
I've set up my first company at 50.
yeah,
I'd say you really can do it. I think it's about small, brave steps
yeah.
and
I've
just
got
doing something.
and I see so many brilliant women struggle in perimenopause that start to pull away because it just gets too hard. Okay, and they start to pull away, and I'm slap banging that, phase of life myself, and friends and colleagues in exactly the same. And so again, when you realise that this isn't the end of your career and you're going to come out the other side, and actually you're going to have more energy when you're out the other side of menopause than you did when you were in your 30s and 40s, actually. So most
Yeah,
people, you
and
know
for and also for 25% of women, menopause is really bad. For the rest of us, it's kind of manageable. So I
terrible.
also think
Yeah,
don't believe the kind of, oh my God, hot flush, pink disaster, kind of
no,
hysterical woman kind of hype. I think often that kind of framing around us can be
yeah,
unhelpful, even though we want doctors to know what they're talking about. And
yeah,
I think that also what happens, I'm a bit older than you, I'm 55. I think you get an amazing kind of energy spike as
yeah,
well. And
yeah,
also, if you do have kids, when they leave home, you suddenly have a lot more time. I mean, I have so much more time now for my work than I did when I
yeah,
was, editorial director in my 30s. I mean, it's the
yeah,
same as you. So I also think that we can do a lot more than we think we can. That was what we
yeah.
found on the
I've got
Camino
two,
last week,
two, two
and
very
that's really true.
two very close friends of mine, in their late 50s. One was the chief inspector of police, who was forced to retire last year at the age of 56.
I hate that. Yeah.
Yep, really hate it. His wife, my good friend Lisa, worked for a bank, one of the big four banks, for 30 plus years. Both of them were going to retire. Unfortunately or fortunately, whichever lens you look at it, they're friends with me. So I was like, right, you got 6 months, go travel, do fun stuff, do up the house, get stuff out your system. But then I'm coming after you because you are in your 50s and you cannot spend 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for 4 to 5 decades
No,
hanging around at coffee shops and doing up your garden and stuff, literally
all
not
out of
on
your
my watch.
mind. Yeah,
So
exactly.
gave them both some things, gave them some obviously some early concepts from the book as it was still being writing. And I'm very pleased to say 12 months on, so they both had their 6 months and they did a road trip across the States and their daughter has just had their first grandchild and it's all wonderful times. And so she has set up a floristry business down on the South Coast, her own business, but not with a shop. So she's doing orders, postal orders, she's doing weddings, she's doing events and hotels, and it's literally flying off the shelves. But she just blocks out the days for the day she doesn't want to work. So she's got a brilliant business, it's in the build. And he loves decorating, has always loved decorating. So he's set up his own decorating business. He's bought the van, he's got all the kit and caboodle. He was chief inspector of the police. So he's trusted in people's homes. I'm like, lean into it. Don't
Mm.
hide, lean into the fact. If I'm wanting
Yes,
to
they
be a
used to be
decorator,
exactly.
I want somebody who's a chief inspector. If I'm a person on my own or feeling vulnerable, I want you, thanks very much, in my home, looking after me, doing a brilliant job. And again, literally flying off the shelves. And so, but with balance, they're taking, 3 times as many holidays as they've ever taken in their working career. They're
Yeah,
choosing the hours that they work. They're giving time apart from each other so that they then have time together with each other. And this is the plan. It's like, how do we plan a life that we never want to retire from? And how do
yeah,
we keep reinventing our life as each decade comes upon us and our priorities change, our wants change, our enjoyment changes, our relationships change? That is what it's all about as we then really look to thrive as we get older.
brilliant. Lyndsey, I think that's a fantastic way to end. Thank you all so much for all your brilliant questions and for being fab audience and for joining us on the session. I think lots of you think it's had good energy. I think that's definitely
What do you
true.
thought of the book?
Yeah, and of course, I'm just going to hold mine up. Don't forget, this is Lyndsey's book. It's The Age Rebellion. She's called Lyndsey Simpson, Lyndsey with a Y, and it's published by Hachette, Octopus, isn't it?
I'll get you to hold it up again, so I can do a little camera picky. Oh, can you go that way a little bit? I've got everyone's picture. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, no, it's brilliant. So lovely to have so many of you. And do join us again for another noon thing. Our next book club interviewee actually is going to be Catherine Stockett, who wrote The Help. I've got an exclusive interview with her before her book comes out over here. The new book's called The Calamity Club. It's her first book for 17 years. And she's completely fascinating, amazing queenager. And the book's all about a whole group of women who get together to run a brothel during the kind of speakeasy years in the kind of
Another idea.
really,
Oldest
really.
profession in the world.
It's a brilliant book. I think and we've got some free copies to give away for people coming to the thing. But Lyndsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It's been really fascinating. I'm going to follow up with you on some of the specifics of
Yep.
the jobs that we've talked about.
Fantastic.
And I'm really grateful to you. And I'm really good luck with the book and
Thank you.
fantastic on Richard Branson. And I'm sure it's going to be a massive smash because
Thank
you're
you.
fantastic and it deserves
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to see you all. Thank you.
brilliant. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.